Hey, Justin. How's it going?
It's going well. How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing well. I have a Duval today. Um,
Duval, man, I've not
Duval. I
drank a
haven't had a
Duval
Duval in
in
a while.
years. Great beer,
Yeah, I'm
legendary
drinking
beer.
out of a fancy glass as well.
That is a Duval. Is that a wit? Is that a wit?
Uh, it's a Belgian strong ale.
Belgian strong. Okay, that's right. I have a wit beer today, a Belgian style white beer. So
Oh,
we have a little
nice.
bit of a theme here. This is a frost proof from Cigar City Brewing.
That's awesome. Well, today we're not actually here to talk about beer today. We're just here to drink
Unfortunately.
it. We're going to talk
Actually,
about
no.
a subject that is near and dear to my heart and to yours, I think, which is
Yes.
productizing services. More importantly, is how to increase margin in professional services companies using technology. And I'll set up for you. Like we run a professional services company, and so we're not perfect at this. Sometimes the cobbler's children have no shoes.
Mhm.
But the thing about professional services companies, most of the time, is they are locked in to the eternal battle of selling your time, right? If you're a lawyer or a consultant or an accountant, or most things that you do, most of the work that you do is billing hourly. There's nothing really wrong with that. You can have a good life that way. Lord knows our lawyer has a good life on the hourly stuff that we pay him. But a product company like Harvest or QuickBooks or Jira, those companies are making margins somewhere in the 70 to 200% range, right? Whereas professional services companies, typically, if they're good, they're hitting 25% margin, gross margins at scale, right? So I think what we want to talk about today is how do we help people get off that hamster wheel, or at least increase their margins using technology? And can they even do that?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, the thing about the service companies fundamentally is like the core kind of problem with service companies, not problem, but challenge, I guess, with service companies that prevents them from scaling well. And by scaling, I mean efficiently delivering higher margins over time. The reason why it's so difficult is because service companies require, almost by definition, human involvement at every step in the fulfillment process, or in
Yep.
most steps of the fulfillment process. And because we as humans are not multiplexable and we're not horizontally scalable necessarily, we can't just replicate ourselves, right? We are constrained by the wall clock time because we are by definition kind of single threaded processes, right? And so what you end up with, kind of speaking at it from a computer science angle a little bit, is that you get a problem where you can only scale as far as you have people to touch the stuff and get the things through the factory. You contrast that with a product company, and a product company's problem is not in fulfillment. Actually, fulfillment, once you build the initial thing, the additional marginal fulfillment happens at nearly no cost most of the, or a lot of the time. I won't say most of the time. There are exceptions to that, of course, but in a lot of time, the 10,000th customer that you serve doesn't really cost any more than the 1,000th customer that you might have served, right? And
Yeah.
so the problem is not in fulfillment. The problem shifts kind of to acquisition and market facing things, demand generation, that kind of thing. And those kind of problems are actually more easily solvable by just dumping money onto it, because you can just dump money onto advertising and marketing and other outbound things to build inbound systems as long as you can fulfill it. You can't do that the same on the fulfillment side. You can't just dump a bunch of money onto a service company and say, hey, like 10x your thing, because you have to add people. And when you add people, you add personalities. And when you have personalities, you add complexity
And
between
payroll.
people and payroll. Right. The costs go up dramatically as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to, increase the size of your law firm by 10x, you would have to hire 10 times as many lawyers,
Right.
right? If you're a training consulting company, you have to hire 10 times as many trainers and course writers and everything like that.
Right. Right. But the argument might be that, like, well, yeah, that takes money. And it takes money to do demand generation too, to dump into marketing and ads to drive to a product type business. So assuming the same $10 million gets applied to a service company or a product company for quote unquote growth, a product company can use that in a much more turnkey way than a service company. A service company can't just grow by 100 people with just money, because you have managerial stuff and structures and communication and interpersonal dynamics, and that makes it harder to scale, even if the money is the same.
But we've seen, and have helped a lot of companies actually in the professional services space, in all services, but particularly in professional services, we've actually helped them get out of that shackle. Undo those shackles, kick off those shackles, right? Help them get off the hamster wheel of that and of billable hours, and help them get into reoccurring revenue and basically SaaS fees.
Yes,
and I think that is really what almost everybody should be starting to think about if they're in a professional services organization.
Yeah, I think so. Mark Andreessen back in 2011 said that software is eating the world. And what he meant by that was that traditional companies that don't look like software companies, that don't look like you built, like your core value proposition is in software. It's that traditional companies, service companies, law firms, physicians, whatever, dry cleaners, technology is starting to make their way into those organizations and find ways to productize their offerings. Exactly, right? And that's where I think what's interesting is to kind of, as a business owner, if you got to step back from it, you say, like, what do we really do? Well, it's not that we hire people to do this thing. We deliver, what kind of value do we deliver? And how might we deliver that value if we didn't have any people? What if all of our people quit and we had to figure out a way to do it? How might we do that? Or how might we deliver part of our service, right, in a way that is kind of powered by technology or productized or automated?
Yeah. I mean, I saw a thing from McKinsey that said that they thought that 60% of all tasks, in 60% of jobs, 1/3 of all tasks could be automated. Now that was 2 or 3 years ago that I read that. So that's one. So we can get into the AI thing here in a minute, but
yeah,
I think a lot of companies, especially companies that do kind of an analysis of something, there's like a spreadsheet involved in their day-to-day organization. Like you come in, you fill out the intake form, you move through from sales to the consultants to the trainers, whatever. Then there's some sort of product delivery or content delivery. Those are reports that are generated. Maybe you're a civil engineer and you have to do a site survey, and then there's like a report generated. Or you're a market researcher and you have to generate like a bunch of PowerPoints or something. You have templates inside of your organization that you're working with day to day. And what is key is the expertise inside of those people's heads, right? Mm-hmm. So if I came to you, Justin, and I was like, hey, I have a business that rearranges, we organize people's living spaces, right? Mm-hmm. We come in and we have a 5-step process. We have new customers that onboard, and then we have a spreadsheet, a checklist of all these things that we go through and do. And, we have I'm just making up a business now. Like we come in and we interview you first. And then based on that interview, we come up with a game plan for what your objectives are. And then we go and we deliver that report back to you. And then you go and clean your own home, right? I'm not saying we're actually going to go reorganize people's houses. We just, we make the plan for them. If that was the business and I walked in to come and talk to you, where would you start? There's like a whole bunch of things there that I think maybe are automatable, but what tickles your fancy that you would tackle first?
Yeah, great question. So we have a fictional company that essentially develops plans for how to reorganize your house to get more space. Maybe the value proposition here is Hey, listen, are you looking at your house not knowing where you're going to put all of this stuff? Let our Tetris experts come up with the mathematically ideal way for you to organize your home to create more space in your existing four walls or something like that, right? So let's think about what that company might do as a brick and mortar service company based here in Tampa, Florida on Linebaugh Avenue, right? Let's assume that there's probably 6 people, 8 people that work at that company, right? We've got a CEO who's kind of doing the thing. We got somebody in charge of marketing and demand. We've got probably 1, 2, maybe 3 designers or strategists who are actually doing the fulfillment of the, I'm going to go sit down with the people, look around their house, take photos, blah, blah, blah kind of thing, right? And then I'm going to come back and do some thinking and whatever. We probably don't have any customer support in that instance, maybe a little bit that is handled by the marketing person, right? But anyway, so like we start to kind of break down the company. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. 8 people. And let's say that they want to scale this. Right now, all they can do, they have 3 designers who can go out and do this. And let's say that those people, if they're fully booked, can do 3 appointments a day, driving around town, getting lunch, right? Okay. So we can do 3 appointments a day. We got 3 times 3, that's 9 times 5, 45 appointments a week. And that is if we max out demand. Assuming marketing kicks ass, we can do 45 a week. We want to get that to 450 a week, let's say, or just even double it to 90.
Sure.
Let's say,
let's start with doubling.
Right? Right. Let's not 10x yet. So how might we start to think about that problem? Well, okay. So where is the biggest constraint in this? Well, for one, it's probably to some degree the designers, right? Because it takes a lot of time. The throughput challenge right here, right now, is probably, assuming that marketing is doing their job, the throughput challenge is it takes a long time to drive around. It takes a long time to sit in somebody's house and interview them about stuff and get pictures. So the first thing that we might do is we might say, I wonder if we have a couple different levels of service. Maybe we have a concierge level of service where for an extra fee, we'll come to your house and look at it. But maybe we open up a lower tier of service and thus opening up a new market for us, which now people go, say, onto our website and they can write in what their goals are, and we interview them through a little wizard, and then they upload photos of their house, and then our designers look at the photos of the house. Maybe they can upload a floor plan, or we can find a way for them to do a walkthrough or something like that to figure out technologically how to get the right information to you. So now what we can do now is we eliminate all the drive time. We have productized the piece of the process that takes the most time. And now that we've done that, we can probably, just using that, probably double the output right there.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that almost all professional services companies that are starting to scale have one thing in common, and that is process. Right? There's normally like the founder was really good at this one particular task, and so they kind of started doing it as a consultant, and that consultancy grew into professional services organization. You see that a lot, right?
Yeah.
Let's say we have a company that does environmental impact studies, and a lot of what they do in these studies is they use their expertise to go in and do soil analysis and et cetera, but they augment that with a bunch of research from national databases. And that is pretty time consuming. They go and they look at all sorts of FEMA information and super site information, and then they put that into these big reports, which banks pay a lot of money for. And the same thing. So like there's a step-by-step process, which means that they can hire cheaper people basically who are not like the most hardcore experts in these things to be able to fulfill many of those kind of tasks. That's how they scale. But then they start to think, well, instead of just having more junior people or less experienced people do those tasks, how can we turn that process into something that a computer can do? Not necessarily with AI, but yes, maybe with AI. Something where it's like, oh, our patented process, the reason you come to us as your home organization designer, is we have a process that you follow, like we put in the square feet, and then we work out how much the maximum amount of storage that you have in a particular home and this kind of style, and like we know what outcomes you should expect. That stuff probably lives in a spreadsheet somewhere in the organization. But like now, if there's an app that you go in and you take all the photos, and it asks you a couple questions of your home, or like it even looks at property records or something like that. That stuff can be generated in the background without any human being touching it. And then the only thing that gets passed off to the actual designer at the end of the day, or the consultant who's delivering this, is all the stuff that's been computed. And now you can switch to, let's say you had a fixed fee model. You can do way more work for the same prices. And if you had a time and materials kind of business, then you can switch to fixed fee, deliver the same amount of quality, the same level of quality, and do 10 times the amount of work, because the computer is now taking over large portions of that.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And I kind of think, as you were saying that, I was thinking processes in a service business are sort of like your algorithm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are the algorithm of your business, right? We talk about algorithm, people use algorithm colloquially to kind of sometimes mean like the secret sauce inside of the product and what it does, right? And so if we use that broad meaning of algorithm, then you can kind of think of it that way. And you can think, well, okay, if I have this algorithm, what parts of that formula, what parts of that algorithm can be solved by computers, and what parts of it require that a person do a little number crunching or something like that. So it's an interesting analogy. And yeah, I think you're exactly right. And here's the thing is like what you're talking about also is, some of this looks like back of the house automation, and some of this looks like changing the way that you interface with customers. And so there's different ways you can think about productizing your business. It doesn't mean that you have to become a product, right? And that you are on Product Hunt and that you are, you look like a product, but you might productize by keeping the front door looking the same, but like right behind that door, it's actually just machines or a lot of machines. But to the user, they have the same kind of experience, a customer in that point.
A really good example is we had a client, or we have a client who does compensation analysis in a very particular field, and it's a highly regulated field, and so it's quite complicated. They had tons and tons of these spreadsheets that they would put in all this data about how long the person had been there, the level of education, the number of kind of tasks they do, whether they're teaching others, managing. There's like a million things in the spreadsheet, right? And they came to us and they said, hey, we want to productize as much of this as possible, maybe even make it self-service for our customers. And the biggest concern that they had at first, especially the people we were working with, was, well, it's going to put me out of a job, right? But I think what was really interesting and eye-opening about the way they thought about it is they said, if we don't do this, if we don't put ourselves, our existing business model, if we don't like kill the old business model, somebody else is going to kill it for us. Yeah. They're going to go and turn what we do into an automated system or a self-service SaaS solution. And we are going to be run out of town on cost. We're just not going to be able to compete anymore. Actually, after the whole system was built, it didn't actually cannibalize the human beings' time. It didn't cannibalize their business to the point where it made it so the consultants, their compensation analysis consultants, all lost their jobs. What actually happened was they were able to do so much more work. They were able to take on so much more now that the customers themselves could just log into the system, fill out the forms, that what happened was that the same number of consultants were still required, because every time that information was put into this regulated industry thing, that the pay that they were going to give somebody was outside of the pay band that was expected. That is regulated to the point where a human being has to go and sign off on the explanation as to why that person is being paid more or less than the pay band requires by law. And that, if you don't do it, you can get sued, or government can come and like fine you, all this kind of stuff. So now that you've like quadrupled the amount of work that you have coming in the door, the number of those risk mitigation sign-offs from the actual experts also had to increase. But all those consultants were not doing all the like grunt work of putting stuff into spreadsheets anymore. They were actually dealing with customers day to day, right? Increasing their value, doing more human work, right? Feeling better about their jobs. And every single time they talk to a customer now, rather than just doing spreadsheet stuff, was another sales opportunity. Yeah. They were like, oh, I see the big flashing red line. Watch out, warning. You click that button. Now you go and talk to a person.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it didn't. Yes, the same amount of people for the same amount of money were doing 4 or 5 times the amount of work.
Right. And that's the thing. I think the kind of blunt view of it, and understandably so, is, oh, these things will replace humans. And like, you just kind of sub in, right? Like, just pull the human out, put the machine in, and like the human is just out on the street. But I think what you're describing is what actually happens, and is actually way better of an outcome, which is that you basically allow people to move up in value, right?
Yes.
And to use more of their humanness in what you do. And there's Jared Spool, who's the founder of UIE, User Interface Engineering, now called the Center. He talked about the concept of hands time versus head time. And then in any given like task, right, there's some percentage of hand time and some percentage of head time that happens, right? Mm-hmm. And really what you want to do most of the time, not always, but most of the time, you want to maximize head time. Head time is the expensive hard time, right? And hand time is the robotic time that usually can be operational or automated. And so by doing this, all you're doing is just kind of changing the mixture between hand and head time, and you're allowing your people to have more head time and have more space to think, right? Like, how many times have you heard somebody in your organization say something like, I just never have time to sit down and think about the strategy because I'm just always doing stuff. I'm always like going. This is the opportunity to allow your organization to actually rise up to that and actually do 100%. The thinking it needs to do.
And those people are going to feel more human. They're going to feel more appreciated. They're going to have a better quality of life. So, right. Okay, so if you're the CEO of a company, right, of a professional services firm, how do you make the like risk versus reward or ROI decision to say like, okay, I want to go and look at automating this process. I've got my concerns are it's going to cost a lot of money. I'm going to have to hire engineers or go hire an agency or somebody like you guys to go and build this. It might cost $50,000 to $500,000. Who knows how much this thing's going to cost? It's going to make my employees are going to feel like I'm trying to replace them. It might mess with morale. My customers might not want to actually, use this. They like that bespoke handheld kind of feeling that we give. How would you as a CEO kind of analyze that situation, like decide whether or not you want to do it?
It's a great question. I think I would look at a few things. The first thing is I am very much a dollar and cents type of person, so I certainly first want to understand if whether or not even embarking on this conversation, am I looking in the right place? If we do this successfully, in a perfect world, does it look like this is going to work out from a numbers perspective, right? I just want to gut check that. I think for most companies, that's an easy yes, to be honest. But I think it's also like, look at what part of this you're doing. The second thing I would say is that I would also think about it like, this is not a light switch. This is an evolution that a company goes through, right? And like any evolution, I think there's kind of an aspect of natural selection to this. And the best way to kind of tap into the process of natural selection is by small, short experiments that you can learn from, and your organization can kind of die off the bad stuff and reinforce the good stuff, right, in a set of cycles. And so I would start 100%. To think about, like, where can I do a small experiment around this to prove that a little bit of this is correct, and then I can do a little bit more and prove a little bit more is correct, right? I would not probably go wholesale in and say, hey guys, tomorrow we're going to be a product company, so we're going to automate all these people, we're going to do this, that's going to introduce chaos in your organization. So I think you have to have a strategy. It's a long-term thing, and that's how I would look, and I would say, where is the easiest experiment we can do to get the best confidence and yes to go to the next step. And you can use ICE scoring, impact, confidence, and ease scoring to help you kind of quantify that, which I think is a good thing, just a good tool to use in order to figure out like what experiments are worth running and which ones aren't. But I think that's how I would start. What about you?
What we normally do is we go and we make a list of all the processes in the business. Mm-hmm. And then we look at which ones are the biggest bottlenecks right, to slow down. This is like if you've ever read the Phoenix Project, which is a great book about process automation and DevOps, if anyone's interested in it. But you make a long list of all those things and you say, which one of these tasks is creating the biggest bottleneck in the process, in our process? Which ones are the most like labor intensive, but also like the dumbest? And then you can kind of sort them out and you say, well, let's start with that. And what would that cost? And then maybe we say, okay, well, how much time would that save us? Would we be able to better use our people's time doing something else and make that as kind of an ROI time-based decision? And then you go down to the next one. You say, well, does this one make sense? And you do the same exercise over and over again, which is kind of like your iteration question, I guess. But I think the one thing is that AI is going to probably change some of like this. You know, that we've had robotic process automation it's been like a popular thing for 20 years. Yeah. But the new some of the new hotness terms is professional service automation, or PSA. I saw something like people who start doing professional service automation are seeing their margins increase by up to 19%. Which, I mean, can you imagine going from a 20% to a 40% margin as a professional service company? Madness,
that's
right?
Crazy. It's crazy.
That's life-changing. That's Ferrari territory now.
Yeah, you wouldn't know what to do with the money.
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of these kind of traditional process things are taking things like spreadsheets and reports and data from various sources and, automating things that way, or building the process in the intake or whatever it is. But how do you think AI is going to affect this in terms of like what you're going to be able to automate? And then how do you still keep the quality or like your reputation if you're using AI as part of this process, right? Like if I don't need my attorney because I'm feeding my contracts into OpenAI, which maybe you should not do, to be honest, depending on who you ask. How do I prove that I am still valuable as an expert, and why you should let me still take over your, you should still pay me even though I'm using the AI now?
Ooh, great questions. I mean, I think that the way AI is like Technicolor. AI just like expanded the dynamic range of things that you can automate. We say this internally a lot about things, and I cannot emphasize this point enough. People come to us now with problems that 5 years ago we would have said there is not really probably an economically defensible way for you to try to solve that problem. Like the amount of work it would take for you to solve that problem technologically, it's so great that you'll never be able to really justify the cost. And so you just effectively can't do it, quote unquote, right? LLM technology has changed so much of that conversation to where so many things are possible to automate now that you could not physically even think about automating 5 years ago, that it really just sort of introduced color to the movies. How do you use that in a way that is defensible and does not hollow out your value proposition core? I think this is a good and very relevant question that I think that is honestly something I think a lot of people in a lot of industries are trying to grapple with. I'll take my best stab at what I got to stab.
I got to take as well when you're done. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there are two pieces of it. One is that you have to realize that not everybody knows how to use AI like you do. And it's not as simple as that. It is not just, AI is not the end all be all tool. You have to know how to use it. You have to have context. And it takes a lot more than just writing a sentence into AI to solve a problem. It takes a lot of other things around it that require expertise to understand to build actually a really good solution is one. And then I think that the second thing I would say is that there is going to be a shift. And I think this is an okay shift. And I think it's one we just all have to embrace, which is that the kind of locus of value proposition, if you will, is going to move from knowledge hoarding, if you will, to
I think we're going to be at this end at the same place here. Carry on. I'm curious.
To essentially process scaffolding. Your ability to prompt an AI and to give it context and that kind of thing becomes your new value proposition.
Yeah. I was kind of going to say the same thing, hopefully in a more pithy way. But anyway, basically, I was going to say, like, a lot of the time and energy that you spend at becoming an expert is the knowledge and the learning, right, and your expertise, and interpreting some of the data, which is AI can do some interpretation, but generative AI is like very good at like just pulling it all together. But the interpretation without an expert reading it is tricky. I would still want, even if ChatGPT built me a contract, I would still want a lawyer to read through it with that experience and say, and that's where he might still charge me $600 to review a contract, but he's doing, 20 contracts now rather than one. And the other part of that is process, which is like you were saying, right? Like, the steps in which you complete something is extremely important as an expert. And you've like a lot of this, like, we're a software engineering company, and mainly what we do is we are really good at process. Like, this is what you do, step one, this is how it goes to QA, this is how it gets deployed. And every professional service company has those processes, and that's actually what your secret sauce is.
Yep.
And so that's what I think ultimately people pay for. Anyway, I just think that if you're a business, if you're a professional services company, you need to get to the point in the next 5 years or so with all this new technology where your business can still make money while you sleep. And and if you can't do that, somebody else is going to come in and work out, especially with AI, they're going to work out how to do that for you, and they're going to put you out of business. So
that's exactly it. I mean, yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, like, you have to start thinking this way. We are in a different age of business. I mean, technology has changed everything, and the market won't wait or care about how you think about this. The market will find the most efficient, cost-effective way to do things, and that includes productization. And so you will get just run over if you don't start to think this way.
Yeah, the firms that break that hours for dollars curse will own the next decade. So
100%.
You guys got to get on it. All right. Well, Mr. Davis, thank you. It's been a lovely way to end a Friday afternoon.
Absolutely. Cheers, sir.
And if anyone's got any questions, let us know.
Make sure to like and subscribe and share with anybody else who you think would enjoy this podcast.
Yeah, if you know somebody who runs a professional services company, send them this, tell them about it, and see what they have to say. See if they're thinking about owning the next decade.
Write into us and let us know, have you done this successfully? What are some case studies? Like, we would love to have you on here on this podcast. We'll interview you, and we'll talk to you about how you have done this as well, because I think more and more people need to hear these case studies and learn from other folks who've been in these trenches going through this.
100%. Well, thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Appreciate you. You guys have a great one.